Hello everyone, welcome to the follow-up video from class. So normally we'll probably do a lot less walkthrough in class, but I wanted to make sure I got you guys started on this since we are in early weeks. So what we did so far in class was, besides making the general shape of the box, we used the insert edge loop tool to create this indent, first by placing a one here, one in the middle, one there, and pinching in this particular, there we go, edge loop. And then we created these two other little ones and we shrunk. Hello? Let's see if I can select it. There we go. We shrunk this interior one just a little bit. And we did that. Let's see. We also selected the bottom of this, pinched it in a little. We extruded for the top. So we had selected this face. Extruded. I accidentally made it smaller at first, and then the beveling didn't work, so then I undid and I made it bigger again. And then we used beveling to get this rounded edge. So next up, we are going to deal with the bottom a little bit and the outside edges. So first up, I'm going to go into vertex mode because it's the easiest to select the bottom to just like that. I'm going to bring it up a little bit because technically this is standing on feet right here. All right, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit, and we are going to be making our feet a little bit differently. And I know I said I was going to continue on with the beveling around the edges, and I am, but in order to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to do the feet first because we have to cut in a little bit, and I'd rather do that before I bevel these edges, I think. Let's find out how friendly that's going to be. So I can go into edge mode. You can see me test this out in real time because I do this a little bit differently every semester. So if I try to insert an edge loop vertically, I am curious to see how amenable this model is to that, and it is. Now you can see it, pinches in a little bit. That's okay though. What we're trying to do is create a space along the bottom. There we go. That we can extrude the feet from. There we go. And yes, I know I am, let's get rid of this grid here. I know I am eyeballing it. And so remember that when you use the insert edge loop tool, you can click and hold. So I can grab that tool, click and hold, and like figure out where this is going to be. Make sure I undo that. And make sure when you're done, you hit W or Q to get out of that tool. I got rid of the grid so we could look underneath. The camera gets a little bit wiggly when you're going underneath something. If you're having a hard time focusing on this, if the camera's tumbling like around some other space off to the side, select the object in question and hit F. And it becomes the center of the camera's attention. It can get a little bit funny if it's trying to go underneath, but at least it should be a little bit better. All right, so to make the feet, we extrude them just like we did the top. I hold down Shift to click these areas. And they go up to Edit Mesh Extrude. And I pull in the blue arrow. Remember, it's pretty much always the blue arrow. Now, here's one of the tricks, and I never remember which of these to be clicking on. So there's a couple different ways to shrink these feet. We want to shrink them a little bit. Whoa, there we go. We can use the offset, except apparently we would need a very tiny number. Nope. 0.01? Is that shrinking it a little? Not enough. Sometimes these numbers in these settings, it's a little weird. Like the scale it's working at doesn't make much sense. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's like trying to shrink it by so much. There we go. Now we can always select these later. I can always select these again. I think yeah, it'll shrink them towards each other, which I actually kind of want. Because see how they shrunk each to itself, but see how this kind of like flares out at the end? And it's going to do that from all sides. And so by shrinking it towards each other, I can kind of like taper it kind of. Again, I'm making that up. I don't know if this. Oh yeah, that box does it a lot. But you know, we can make a few changes. Doesn't have to look exactly like it. There we go. Anytime you're looking at a movie and you're like, oh, that looks exactly like the thing, they probably scanned it. So, all right, now that we have this done, so far we've done everything pretty much by the book. It's all quads, I believe. Yep. And the order we've done it in gives us our edge loops properly. Not only is it all quads, but we'll get to this later, it also matters how many intersections there are. So it's an edge going across an edge, they're not coming to a star. That is about to end though, because in order to get the look that we want, we need to bevel a couple more edges, and we don't have the tool set yet to like really make things nice and proper. So we're going to bevel some edges because it'll look nice, but just keep in mind that the result is maybe a little squiggly. So we're going to go to edge, and I'm going to double click it and see how it gets the whole edge up to the corners. That's exactly what we want. Then I hold down shift, and I do that as well, and I repeat that process, holding down shift and then double clicking an edge for all four. I want to do all four at the same time because I want to use the same settings. I want to see how it looks across all four. Edit mesh bevel. What the bevel will do is basically split that. I want more than one segment though. And I might want this closer together. There we go, so 0.3 maybe. So we didn't go into these settings too much in class, but the ones we're going to pay attention to the most are fraction and segments. Segments is how many segments it's been split into, and if you use an odd number, you will lose where your exact edge is. If you use an even number, it will put an edge along the line. So you can see there is an edge still along the actual corner. I wonder how many I used in here. Oh, I used 3. This fraction, maybe I'll do something like that, is how far apart they are. But it's a function of what's going on outside of it. So the same numbers are not going to look the same on different sized models. Now, unfortunately, in order to edit, ooh, for God's sake, well, lost it. In order to edit that, once you lose that box, you technically have the ability to edit it, but you got to edit it now. So I've done that. Let's say I decide I want something to change. I click here. This is a history. So this is the channel box. This is, the translate, rotate, scale, right? Those are your transforms. These are the inputs of all the stuff that you've done, all the edge loop splits, all the movements of different things. The bevel is right here. And so for the moment, before I do anything else, I can make a change. I can say fraction 0.11 or something and make it tighter and see how that looks, because it's hard to see it when it's all selected, but once you deselect it, it's gone for good. So we can go back and forth a little bit on this 0.13, something like that. But once I go do something else, that setting's gone. And changing it might be a matter of deleting all the extra edge loops and rebeveling it, which is not impossible, but it's annoying. So keep in mind that you want to click off things because the whole point of beveling stuff is to see how the edge looks. All right, so that's the basics of this. You can see it looks, pretty much like this other one. It's a little bit different in certain details. Just to look at it, this one is a little bit straighter. This opening's a little bit bigger. Now what I would do is I would look at this unto itself and ask myself, okay, what do I need to do to make this a little bit better? And once again, I'm finding that as I did in class, I double clicked those edge loops that are around that opening because I just don't think it's like a deep enough opening. And I can also shrink that in a little bit as well because it's not reading as an opening. Okay. Here's another thing that can happen. If you're looking at it, you're like, oh, why does that look weird? Sometimes surfaces can get a little bit funny in here, and that's what's happening here. So if we look here, this is like really tight. You can see that edge sharply, and then we get over here and it's like, this is the same thing. And it gets all blurry and mushy. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but just as a preview. Mesh display. So I can say harden edge, and you'll see everything faceted, which is not quite what we want. But it changes the surface directions basically. But we can kind of tinker with that. I can say harden edge. I can say soften edge. Oh, that actually, nope, mush central again. So yeah, this is definitely a surface direction problem, which we'll get into later. But basically, it's done correctly, but there's a surface issue that is making the light hit it funny. And so you can see it. Ooh, did that work out well? Yes, it did. So what's happening is we're not changing the shape at all. The shape is unchanged. We're telling Maya how to handle the edges and the light. And what we told it basically is harden edges means make every edge really, really sharp. In other words, this face right here is facing a completely different direction than this one, and therefore the light should treat them completely differently. So give it a sharp edge, as opposed to softer edges where, oh, these are all like a gradation, so we should make it gradual. Now, if you soften all the edges, then even this gets made softer. So the light says, all right, we're going around a bend. By selecting harden and soften, it basically picked one or the other. So it has a threshold, and it was like, all right, if they're this gradual, we're going to soften the edge. If it's this sharp, we're going to harden the edge. It did help, but not entirely. Still looks a little bit funny. Looks good from this distance. I like it from this distance. We'll get into more stuff like this later, so don't really worry about it too much. Just be aware that it can be a problem. The reality is all of these details would be decided on later, because based on actual lighting and actual texturing that was done. So there would be other decisions, and the place you work for will have its own type of rendering situation, and the project you're working on will have its own parameters. So that's what would happen there. All right, make sure you save your work. Make sure your last name is on the file. In terms of what we are doing, so in this week's walkthrough, which is basically partly in class, partly for this video, the box has a curved top, 4 legs at the bottom, and an indent in the middle, right? Those are your basics. That's the stuff that has to exist. And then trying to, up the grade or like get better at this, get more practice, really trying to watch the example shape and, not mimicking it exactly, because that's obviously it's very difficult even for someone like me to mimic this exactly, but get the spirit of it and also make it look good, right? So don't lavish too much attention on every tiny little detail of this. Get it to look like a box that's like this, but then also make it look nice and fix certain little things that are maybe bothering you. And that might mean going back into edge mode and changing, how this crease works, or it could be going into face mode and changing, because we can even still do this now, how long the feet are. It could mean beveling other edges. Technically speaking, these edges could be beveled. Give them a different look. So you have all of those options available to you. This is about practice. Uh-oh. I'm not going to click that so I can keep this. So you have, this is the purpose of this is to get practice, to get used to these tools. And make sure you have clean geometry. Your edge loops aren't all crazy. Things haven't gone all askew. You haven't been you didn't just randomly take a few vertexes and yank them down here for the feet, like you extruded for the feet. Hidden faces I did not go over yet. Allow me to explain. This is something that happens when we extrude and don't back up incorrectly. It happens a lot, actually. So I have a face, and I say edit mesh, extrude, and then I move it up, and I'm like, oh no, crap, I selected the wrong thing, and hit undo, and I don't undo it again. Technically, this is still extruded. That's still there. The only thing I undid is the moving of it. I have to undo twice. It should say undo poly extrude and the tool should disappear. That's how you know it's been properly extruded. If you don't see those things, then it hasn't happened. If you do not properly extrude and then I don't move it, right? A few things happen. One, your edge loops might go screwy because you're like, the model thinks there's extra stuff in there. But later on, that face will randomly show up. And it creates what's called hidden faces because if I go to move this vertex, what the heck is that? This is what bad edge loops look like, right? Now, there's plenty of ways to fix this problem if you miss it and it gets stuck there. All right, we're going to be living in this problem for a while. One of the ways to check for it is to actually go into vertex face mode. See these little lines? That means it's there. All right, that means you've got a hidden face. Vertex face mode, you can't do anything in this mode. You can just look. And these are very, very tiny faces, but they're faces. These right here, those are hidden faces. There's 0 area faces if you want to get technical. All right. So there you have it. Now, if, in my case, I can undo far enough. In your guys' cases, what is the easiest way to fix this? I would say the easiest way to fix this, if you have something like this, it depends on what it is. In this case, if it's really simple, you can actually delete faces. Be very cautious about this. Don't just go doing it willy-nilly. I got rid of the extras, and there's now a hole in the top of the box. Select one edge, select the other edge, edit mesh, bridge. Fills in the hole. Great for filling in one particular polygon. If you have multiples, that's a whole other story. All right. So be careful about your extruding. Make sure you are always moving before you do anything. And I just remembered an even better way to fix this. So let's say we have something a lot more complex. Edit mesh extrude. Move it. Oh, wait, no, we're not supposed to move it up. Ha. And so you discover later on that, whoops, there's extra faces. Go into vertex mode. Drag select the whole area, the whole thing. And go to edit mesh, merge, and go to your options box. This right here is called an options box. Not all the tools, a lot of the tools have it. This is a threshold. It will merge anything that's this close, but not closer. So we better hope these aren't too close. These are right on top of each other. So your number could be very small and they'll still merge. So I'm gonna hit apply. And I know it did something because it says poly merge vert 1 and it says it down here. This is like your running tally of what's happening. But I watched this closely. Nothing randomly merged. If you put this up too high, right? Here we go. Things that are not supposed to be merged get merged. I undid too far, so we're going to do that. We're going to say edit mesh. What are my options? 0.01. There we go. Apply. There it is. But now this is all kosher again. All right, so we're going to get into more troubleshooting stuff as we go. But just for right now, just be careful. If you extrude, make sure to then move it. Or if you undo, make sure you go back to the point where it says poly, extrude, undo. Or if you see other things like walking themselves backwards, you've gone far enough. All right, but pretty simple exercise. This is about control. This is about showing that you're, having control of your model. And next week we'll be building on all of these tools.